A man once demanded a refund because his fish smelled like fish. A woman filed a formal complaint against a pelican for, quote, staring at her in a threatening manner. And one guy tried to haggle the charter price after the boat was already a mile offshore. These are 69 of the dumbest complaints ever left on fishing and boat charters across America. And trust me, they only get worse from here. 1. So this charter company in the Florida Keys gets a 1-star review that just says, "Too much water, felt unsafe." That's it. That's the whole review. The crew tracked down the booking, and turns out this woman was genuinely upset that the boat was surrounded by ocean on all sides. She called it claustrophobic. On the open ocean, infinite horizon in every direction, and she felt boxed in. The captain later said she also refused a life jacket because it didn't match her sundress. Priorities, I guess. 2. A guy books an $800 salmon fishing trip in Alaska, catches a beautiful king salmon, and immediately starts complaining. Why? The fish fought back. He said reeling it in hurt his arms and shoulders and wanted to know why the crew didn't, quote, tire the fish out first before putting it on his line. He literally wanted pre-exhausted salmon delivered to his hook like room service. My man, the fight is the whole point. That's what you paid for. 3. A couple in San Diego chartered a private sunset cruise with optional fishing, and everything was going perfectly until the sun started setting on the port side instead of starboard. They needed it on the right side for their photos. The captain offered to simply turn the boat around. They said no because then they'd be facing the wrong direction. So the sun is wrong, and the solution is also wrong. I'd love to know what right looks like in their universe. 4. Would you ever call a fishing charter and ask them about their Wi-Fi password? Because a family in Hawaii did exactly that. Not for emergencies. They wanted to live stream their trip on TikTok, 40 miles offshore, on a 26-foot boat. When the captain said there was no satellite internet, the dad called it false advertising because the brochure mentioned modern amenities. Those amenities were a cooler with ice and a working marine radio. Not exactly a 5G hotspot. 5. One customer in the Gulf of Mexico filed a complaint because the bait was, and these are his words, revolting. He refused to touch the shrimp and squid, gagged at the smell, and asked if the boat carried synthetic or plant-based alternatives. Here's the kicker, though. He wasn't opposed to catching fish. He wasn't opposed to eating fish. He just didn't want to touch anything gross in the process. That's like wanting to be a firefighter but refusing to get near heat. 6. A lady on a deep-sea trip out of Montauk got seasick about an hour in. Happens to a lot of people, no shame in that. But instead of blaming the ocean or her own stomach, she blamed the captain. She said he was driving the boat aggressively and hitting waves on purpose. She demanded he take a smoother route, through the Atlantic Ocean, as if there's a paved highway out there with no speed bumps. The crew gave her ginger ale and crackers and she left a review calling them reckless operators. 7. Tell me you've never been outside without telling me you've never been outside. A charter customer on Lake Michigan left a review saying the water was not blue enough. He said the website showed turquoise, Caribbean-looking water, and what he got was gray and murky. He booked the trip in November, during an overcast week, on a Great Lake in the Midwest, and he wanted a partial refund for the difference in color. The charter company's response was just a screenshot of the weather forecast that day. 8. This one genuinely made me pause. A man in North Carolina wrote a formal complaint because a pelican landed on the bow of the boat and, quote, stared at him in a threatening manner. He called the bird predatory and demanded the charter company implement animal control protocols. The pelican sat there for maybe 40 seconds before flying off. 40 seconds of pure psychological warfare, apparently. Somewhere out there, that pelican is still a wanted criminal and doesn't even know it. 9. You ever catch a fish and get mad at it for being ugly? Because that happened on a charter in the Chesapeake Bay. A woman reeled in a perfectly good catfish and immediately screamed. Not from excitement, from disgust. She said it was the most hideous thing she'd ever seen and demanded the crew throw it back because she didn't want it looking at her. Then she complained that the captain should have warned her that some fish are unattractive. What was he supposed to say? Ma'am, the sea is not a beauty pageant? 10. A group of college guys booked a bay fishing trip in Texas in July on a boat with no shade. and then complained about the heat in Texas. In July, they asked why there was no air conditioning, no canopy, no cold towels. One of them said he expected it to be more like fishing from a yacht. At $150 a head, you get a cooler, a rod, and whatever the sun decides to do to you. That's the package. 11. A father in Virginia booked a family charter, and his 7-year-old son didn't catch anything in the first 20 minutes. 20 minutes. That's less time than most people spend deciding what to watch on Netflix. The dad called it a complete waste of money and asked the crew to just put a fish on the kid's hook so he could have a picture. When they said that's not how fishing works, he hit them with, "Patience wasn't part of the package I paid for." I mean, technically, it kind of was. 12. A lobster boat tour in Maine got a scathing review because a passenger felt the lobsters were being exploited. She demanded the crew release every lobster they pulled from the traps and called the whole operation a floating animal abuse facility. This captain has been lobstering for over 35 years. His family's been doing it for generations. And now he's a marine villain because a tourist from Connecticut felt bad for the crustaceans. Have you ever seen a complaint that made you question reality? Because this one does it for me. 13. Nothing says, "I've never been on a boat," quite like bringing a full glass of red wine onto a deep-sea charter. A woman in Oregon did exactly that, then acted shocked when a wave knocked it all over her white jacket. She blamed the captain for not avoiding the waves. Just let that sit for a moment. She wanted the captain of a fishing vessel to dodge individual ocean waves while simultaneously tracking tuna. And when he couldn't do that because no human can, she left a review calling the crew careless. 14. Here's one that says a lot about expectations versus reality. A couple from New York chartered a boat in the Bahamas and complained there were too many other boats in the ocean. They thought chartering a private boat meant they'd have the entire ocean to themselves. When other vessels appeared on the horizon, they accused the captain of not booking an exclusive route. Somebody explained to these people that the sea is public. You can't reserve a lane in the Caribbean. It's not a bowling alley. 15. A charter customer in Montana went fly fishing and complained that the river was moving too fast. He said the current made it hard to stand and asked the guide if he could slow it down somehow. The guide, probably questioning every life decision that led to this moment, asked what he meant. The guy said maybe they could put some rocks upstream to block the flow a little. He wanted to partially dam a river. For a 3-hour fishing trip. If that's not peak entitlement, I honestly don't know what is. 16. Quick question for you. If you book a whale watching and fishing combo, and federal law says the boat has to stay 100 yards from any whale, whose fault is that? If you answered the captain's, congratulations. You think like a woman from Massachusetts who left a furious review saying the whales were too far away for photos. She wanted the boat closer. The crew explained the law. Her response was, "That sounds like a you problem, not a me problem." That's not how maritime law works, but okay. 17. A guy on a charter in Georgia caught some shrimp during a shrimping trip and then complained they were way smaller than what you get at Red Lobster. He could not wrap his head around the fact that restaurant shrimp are sorted, graded, and selected for size. He genuinely believed the ocean is just packed with jumbo shrimp swimming in perfect rows, ready to plate. The captain said he had to walk to the wheelhouse so the guy wouldn't see him completely losing it. 18. Imagine paying for a sunrise charter that leaves the dock at 5 in the morning and then complaining that it was too early. A customer in the Outer Banks did this and left a review saying the departure time was unreasonable and inconsiderate. The captain tried to explain that sunrise charters leave before sunrise, because that's how sunrise works. The customer responded that 6:30 or 7 would have been more civilized. At that point, it's not a sunrise trip, it's just a trip. 19. A woman booked a sunset fishing charter off the California coast and then filed a complaint because it got dark afterward. She said nobody warned her that the sky would go dark after the sun went down. Let me say that again. She did not know that nighttime follows sunset. The captain had to explain the rotation of the Earth while docking the boat. I've heard some wild complaints in my life, but not understanding how daytime works is a top-tier entry. 20. Safety rules exist for a reason, and that reason is usually people like this. A group on a charter in the Outer Banks threw a fit because the captain asked everyone to wear life jackets during rough seas. They called it patronizing and complained it ruined the aesthetic of their group photos. One of them literally said, "We're adults. We don't need babysitting." The captain, who has personally pulled 3 drowning people out of the water during his career, was not entertained. Wear the jacket. Get over yourself. 21. A customer on a Lake Powell fishing trip in Arizona left a review saying the scenery was too ugly. He complained about the desert landscape, the red rocks, the sand. He said he expected green hills and pine trees in Arizona, in the middle of the desert. His suggestion to the charter company? Consider relocating to a more scenic lake. Yeah, just pack up the entire operation, move to Vermont, no big deal. If there was an award for most delusional complaint on this list, this one would be a strong contender. 22. So a first-timer on a small charter in South Carolina asked where the bathroom was. Fair question. The captain pointed to a bucket behind a curtain. The customer lost it. He said he was expecting at least a basic restroom and refused to use the bucket for the entire 6-hour trip. He held it, 6 hours, on a rocking boat. Then left a review saying the charter was inhumane. My brother in Christ, it's a 22-foot fishing boat, not a Royal Caribbean cruise ship. 23. A man in Minnesota slipped on the deck and got his shorts wet. On a boat. On a lake. Surrounded by water. His complaint? The deck should have been fully dry at all times. He threatened to sue for negligence. The charter company pointed out that their waiver literally says you will get wet in bold on the first page. He said he didn't read the waiver. Shocker. If you go on a boat and get surprised by moisture, the ocean isn't the problem, you are. 24. Here's one where the complaint is so specific, it almost sounds like a parody. A charter customer in Louisiana said the captain had too thick of a Cajun accent and he couldn't understand the safety briefing. He called it linguistically exclusive. Sir, you are in the bayou, with a man whose family has fished these waters for 4 generations. That accent is the most authentic part of your experience. Maybe next time bring flashcards, or better yet, just listen a little harder. 25. A tourist in Key West complained that the charter didn't provide sunscreen. When the crew said they don't carry personal care products, the guy said it should be included in the experience, like at a resort. He spent 4 hours under the tropical sun without any protection, got absolutely scorched, and then left a review calling the company negligent for failing to protect passengers from ultraviolet exposure. You are on a boat in the tropics. The sun is not a surprise twist ending. It's been up there the whole time, doing exactly what it always does. 26. You know what's a reasonable thing to complain about on a fishing charter? A broken engine, a rude captain, maybe unsafe conditions. You know what's not reasonable? The wind. A woman on a charter out of Cape Cod left a review saying the wind destroyed her hair, and the captain should have chosen a less windy route, across the open Atlantic, where wind exists everywhere, all the time. She said she would have brought a hat if someone had warned her there'd be wind. On the ocean, on a boat. 27. A man in Florida booked a half-day charter, caught absolutely nothing, and demanded a full refund because the website said, "Great fishing guaranteed." The captain pulled up the actual website. It said, "Great fishing experience." Not guaranteed fish. Not, "We promise you'll catch something." But this guy read the word great and apparently interpreted it as a legally binding contract with the fish themselves. He left a review calling the company fraudulent. Over a word. 28. Let me ask you something. If you're deathly afraid of the ocean, would you book a deep-sea fishing trip? Most people would say, obviously not. But a man in New Jersey did exactly that, and then had a full panic attack 30 minutes into the trip. The crew had to turn the entire boat around, cut the trip short for everyone else on board, and bring him back to the dock. His complaint afterward? The company should have screened passengers for phobias before departure. Like a psychological evaluation at the marina. 29. A woman in the Florida Keys caught a barracuda and then demanded the captain take it back because it looked scary. Not throw it back. Take it back. Like returning a blouse to Nordstrom. She said the teeth were aggressive looking, and she didn't want that thing anywhere near her cooler. The mate tossed it back in the water, and she complained about that too because the splash got her sandals wet. There was genuinely no winning with this woman. 30. A charter in the Chesapeake Bay got a complaint because the captain was playing country music on the boat speakers. The customer said it was offensive to his taste and asked for jazz. When the captain said the speaker was his personal one and this was his boat, the customer said, "Customer service means accommodating preferences," over a Bluetooth speaker. On a fishing trip, where the main soundtrack should be the water and reeling line anyway. But sure, let's debate music genres at 6 in the morning. 31. This might be the most entitled complaint on this entire list. A couple in the Bahamas chartered a fishing boat and got upset because the captain ate lunch at the same time they did. They said it was unprofessional for the captain to eat in front of paying customers. The man has been driving your boat for 4 hours in the sun, and he's not allowed to eat a sandwich? They wanted him to eat out of sight below deck. On a 20-foot center console, where there is no below deck. 32. So a customer in Washington state went on a salmon charter and caught a beautiful fish. Gorgeous. Textbook catch. Then he asked the crew to fillet it on the spot and was horrified when he saw blood. He said nobody told him that fish had blood inside them. I need you to sit with that for a second. A grown man did not know that fish have blood. He refused to take the fillet home and called the whole thing traumatizing. What did he think was keeping the fish alive? Good vibes? 33. Of all the things you could complain about on a fishing charter, one customer in New Jersey chose dock parking. He drove to the marina for a 6 a.m. departure, couldn't find a spot close enough, and had to walk about 5 minutes from his car to the dock. 5 minutes. He left a review saying the logistics were a nightmare, and the charter company should provide valet service or at least a shuttle to a fishing dock at dawn in a gravel lot that holds maybe 20 cars. The entitlement is almost impressive at this point. 34. A group in Hawaii went on a sport fishing charter, and one of them hooked a massive marlin. Incredible moment, right? Dream catch for most people. But when the crew explained that the marlin would be released because it was a catch and release policy, the customer demanded they keep it. He said he earned that fish and threatened to call the police if they let it go. The police, for releasing a fish into the ocean where it lives. 35. Have you ever been on a boat where someone immediately asks, "How long until we're back?" about 10 minutes after leaving the dock? A teenager on a family charter in the Gulf did exactly that, and his mom backed him up. She told the captain her son was bored and asked if the boat had video games or a TV. On a 24-foot fishing boat in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. When the captain said no, she replied, "Well, what are we supposed to do for 4 hours? Fish?" The answer is fish. That's why you're here. 36. A man on a deep-sea charter in North Carolina caught a mahi-mahi and then Googled it on his phone. He found out that mahi-mahi is also called dolphin fish. And that's when everything fell apart. He started yelling at the captain, accusing the crew of making him catch a dolphin. The crew spent 15 minutes explaining that a dolphin fish is not a dolphin. Completely different animal, different species, different everything. He didn't believe them. He called the charter company later that evening and threatened to report them to PETA. 37. A customer in Michigan showed up to a charter with a rolling suitcase, a tripod, a ring light, and 2 backup batteries. He was a content creator. He spent the entire trip filming himself and complained afterward that the crew kept getting in the way of his shots on their own boat while doing their actual jobs. His review said the captain had no awareness of camera angles and the mate walked through the background too many times. These men were baiting hooks and pulling lines, but sure, they should have checked the frame first. 38. 20 minutes of light rain during a 4-hour charter in South Carolina, and a customer wanted a 50% refund because the weather wasn't as advertised. Not a storm, not dangerous, not even heavy. Just clouds doing what clouds do. The company doesn't advertise weather, they advertise fishing. But this person genuinely believed that buying a charter ticket was also buying a sunshine guarantee from the sky itself. I wish it worked that way. I really do. 39. A woman in California brought her Pomeranian on a fishing charter without asking permission. When the captain said dogs weren't allowed on board, she said the dog was her emotional support animal and threatened a lawsuit. The dog, by the way, barked non-stop for the first hour, peed on the tackle box, and nearly fell overboard twice. The other passengers were furious. The captain had to cut the trip short. Her review: 1 star. Not pet-friendly. 40. A first-time fisherman in Texas hooked a redfish and immediately handed the rod to the mate because he didn't want to do the hard part. He just wanted to pose with the fish at the end for a photo. When the mate said, "That's not really how it works," the customer said, "I'm paying for the experience, not the labor." That sentence lives in my head rent-free. Fishing is literally the labor. The experience is the labor. That's the whole thing. 41. I want you to guess what the complaint is before I tell you. A man in Florida goes snapper fishing. He catches a snapper. A legal, keepable, beautiful red snapper. And he's angry. Why? It was red. He wanted a different color. He said the website showed a variety of fish, and he specifically wanted something more tropical looking, like blue or yellow. He was shopping for fish by color, like he was picking paint swatches at Home Depot. The captain said in 20 years of charters, that was a first. 42. A customer in Alaska went halibut fishing and caught a solid 60-pounder. Great catch by any standard. But when the captain started heading back, the customer asked how long the return trip would take. 45 minutes. He said that was too long and asked if there was a shortcut. Through the ocean, where there are no roads, no intersections, and definitely no shortcuts. The captain pointed at the open water in every direction and said, "This is it." The customer sat down, crossed his arms, and pouted like a kid in a car seat asking, "Are we there yet?" for the 9th time. 43. A couple booked a romantic sunset cruise with light fishing out of Savannah. Everything was going fine until the woman hooked a small shark. She screamed, dropped the rod, and then demanded the captain call for help. The crew calmly removed the shark from the line and released it. Done. 30 seconds. But she spent the remaining 2 hours sitting in the center of the boat, refusing to go near the edge, and left a review saying the company failed to disclose the presence of sharks in the ocean, where sharks famously live. 44. A man on a charter out of Galveston asked the captain to turn off the current because it was making the boat drift while they were anchored. He thought the anchor was supposed to freeze the boat in place like a parked car, and the fact that it was swaying at all meant something was broken. The captain explained that current is a natural force of the ocean, and the boat will always move a little. The customer replied, "Then what's the point of the anchor?" "I don't know, man. Maybe so we don't end up in Mexico." He left a review saying the equipment was faulty. The equipment was the ocean. 45. A customer in Maryland booked a crabbing charter on the Chesapeake and complained that pulling up crab pots was too much physical work. She said she thought she'd be sitting in a chair watching the crew do everything while she sipped champagne. When the captain explained that crabbing is hands-on, she said, "I didn't pay to work, I paid to watch." Then she sat down, did nothing for 3 hours, and left a review saying the trip was boring because nothing happened. Because she refused to participate in her own activity. 46. A man on a party boat in New Jersey complained about the other passengers. Not because they were loud or rude, because they were catching more fish than him, and it felt unfair. He asked the captain to move him to a better spot on the boat. When the captain said all spots were roughly equal, the guy accused him of favoritism. He believed the crew had intentionally placed the better fishermen in premium positions. On a party boat, where you stand wherever you want. There is no VIP section on a party boat. 47. A charter out of Destin, Florida got a 1-star review because the boat, quote, smelled like a boat. That's it. That was the complaint. It smelled like fiberglass, salt, diesel, and ocean, which is exactly what a boat smells like. Because it's a boat. The customer said the smell gave her a headache and the company should invest in air fresheners or aromatherapy diffusers on a fishing vessel in open air. I can't even be sarcastic about this one because the complaint is already a parody of itself. 48. How do you feel about tipping your charter captain? Because a man in the Florida Keys felt strongly that he should not have to. After a full-day trip where the captain put him on grouper, snapper, and a kingfish, the customer handed over 0 tip and then complained in a review that the mate seemed annoyed. He said tipping culture is out of control, and the charter price should cover everything. The crew spent 8 hours in the sun putting this man on fish after fish. But sure, gratitude is optional. 49. A woman booked a kayak fishing tour in South Carolina and then complained the kayak was too small and unstable. She wanted something wider and more secure. What she described in her review was, essentially, a boat. She wanted a boat. She booked a kayak, showed up expecting a boat, sat in a kayak, and left a review saying the company should upgrade their vessels. The kayak was the vessel, and it was doing exactly what kayaks do. She just didn't want a kayak. 50. We're at the halfway point, and I promise you, these complaints don't get any smarter. A man in Wisconsin went ice fishing on a guided charter and complained that it was too cold on a frozen lake in Wisconsin in January. He said the heated ice shanty wasn't warm enough, and he expected lodge-like conditions. The guide had a propane heater running the entire time, hot coffee on hand, and the guy was still upset. He wanted a fireplace on a frozen lake, inside a portable shelter that weighs less than his luggage. 51. A charter in the Outer Banks got a complaint because the fish the customer caught didn't look like the fish on the menu at his favorite restaurant. He caught a whole, unprocessed, fresh-off-the-hook fish and was confused because it still had a head, and eyes, and a tail. He asked the mate where the normal part was, meaning the fillet. He didn't realize that restaurant fish starts out as, a full fish. Someone at some point has to remove those parts. That someone is not Mother Nature. 52. A customer on a Lake Erie charter brought his own rod and reel from home. Nothing wrong with that, except it was a $5 children's rod with cartoon characters on it, rated for panfish. They were going for walleye. The captain gently suggested he use one of the boat's rods instead, and the customer got offended. He said his rod was lucky, and he didn't need advice. It snapped in half on the first decent bite. He blamed the fish. Not the rod. The fish. 53. A family in Florida went on an airboat tour that included catch-and-release fishing in the Everglades. The mom complained that the alligators in the water made her feel judged, not scared. Judged. She said they were staring, and it made the fishing experience uncomfortable and hostile. The captain assured her the gators had zero interest in her as long as she stayed on the boat. She replied, "But how do you know what they're thinking?" Fair point, I guess? No, it's not a fair point. 54. A customer on a charter in San Francisco Bay complained that the Golden Gate Bridge was in the way during the trip. He said it blocked the view of the open ocean and made the bay feel closed off. That's the Golden Gate Bridge, one of the most photographed structures in America. And this man looked at it and thought, obstacle. His suggestion was that the captain go around it, which technically every boat does. That's how bridges work. You go under them. 55. A woman in the Florida Keys requested a catch-and-cook experience where the crew would prepare her fish right on the boat. She caught a yellowtail snapper and then asked the mate to cook it with no oil, no butter, no seasoning, gluten-free, and not too hot. On a camp stove, on a rocking boat, in the middle of the ocean. When the result wasn't up to her standards, she said the crew needed culinary training. She basically wanted Gordon Ramsay in a life jacket filleting fish on a cooler lid. 56. Have you ever seen someone try to negotiate the price of a charter while already on the boat? A man in Alabama waited until they were about a mile offshore and then told the captain he thought the price was too high and offered half. When the captain said the full amount was due as agreed, the customer said, "Well, what are you going to do? We're already out here." The captain turned the boat around, drove back to the dock, and refunded nothing. Sometimes the ocean gives you justice. 57. A customer on a charter in Virginia caught a cobia and wanted to mount it. Not have it taxidermied by a professional later. He wanted it mounted right there on the boat. Immediately. He asked the mate if they had a board or a plaque or something. He literally thought the crew walked around with trophy mounting equipment ready to create a wall display between catches. When they said no, He acted like they were unprepared, as if every fishing charter should double as a taxidermy studio. 58. Two friends booked a charter in the Florida Keys and each caught one fish. Same species, roughly the same size. But one guy's fish was about 2 inches longer, and the other one threw a tantrum. A grown man in his 40s got visibly upset because his friend's fish was slightly bigger. He demanded to go back out and get a bigger one, even though their time was up. He said it wasn't fair. This isn't a competition. Or maybe for him, everything is. Either way, 2 inches ruined his whole day. 59. A man in Oregon went steelhead fishing on a guided river trip and complained that the guide was too quiet. He said the guide didn't make enough conversation, didn't tell jokes, and basically just focused on finding fish, which is his job. The customer said it felt awkward, and he expected the guide to be more like a tour host or entertainer. My brother, this man is reading the river, watching the current, tracking fish patterns, and you want him to do stand-up comedy on top of that? 60. A customer in Hawaii went on a sport fishing charter and hooked a huge A-high tuna. The fight lasted about 40 minutes. Real battle. Arms shaking, sweat dripping, the whole deal. And when it was finally boated, the customer looked at the crew and said, "Okay, I want to do it again, but faster this time." As if the tuna is going to cooperate with a tighter schedule. The captain explained that big fish fight as long as they want. The customer replied, "Then find me one that gives up quicker." That's not a fishing request. That's a personality description. 61. A woman on a charter in Key Largo complained that the fish finder screen was ugly and ruined the view from the helm. She said all the electronics looked too industrial and suggested the captain cover them with a nice cloth or decorative panel when not in use. These are navigational and fish-finding instruments. They keep the boat running and people safe. But yeah, let's drape a linen napkin over the GPS so the boat feels more like a living room. 62. A customer in New Hampshire booked a deep-sea trip in January and complained that the ocean water was cold, not the air. The water. He accidentally got splashed and said the water temperature was unacceptable. In the North Atlantic, in the middle of winter. He asked the captain if they could go somewhere warmer. Where? Bermuda? Right now. That's a 1,400-mile detour, but sure, let's just pop down to the Caribbean because your sleeve got wet. 63. A charter in Louisiana got a complaint because the customer didn't like the way the mate held the fish for his photo. He said the mate's hand was in the wrong position, and it made the fish look smaller than it was. He demanded they catch another fish of the same size so they could redo the photo properly. The mate, who was holding a 20-pound redfish with both hands in the standard grip, just blinked. Twice. In silence. Some complaints don't deserve words. 64. A group of friends booked an overnight fishing trip off the coast of Virginia, and one of them complained about the stars. Not that there weren't enough, that there were too many. He said the sky at night in the open ocean was overwhelming and disorienting, and he couldn't sleep because the stars were too bright. This man was disturbed by the natural beauty of an unpolluted night sky. Most people would call that a once-in-a-lifetime experience. He called it a lighting issue. 65. A man in Texas went bow fishing for the first time on a guided trip and complained that the arrows went into the water and didn't come back. He didn't understand that bow fishing arrows are attached to a line, except his weren't, because he had cut the retrieval line off before shooting because it was tangled and annoying. So he launched about 15 arrows into the river, lost all of them, and then blamed the guide for not stopping him. The guide said he didn't notice because he was helping other clients. Sometimes you can't save people from themselves. 66. A man on a charter in the Florida Keys caught a nice-sized grouper, took one look at it, and then asked the mate to make it bigger. Not catch a bigger one, make this one bigger. He wanted to know if they could pump it up somehow, so it looked more impressive in photos. The mate asked if he was serious. He was, dead serious. He'd seen photos online where guys were holding massive fish and he thought there was some kind of trick the crew could do to inflate the catch. Like a fish-sized Photoshop, but in real life, on a boat, with no tools. 67. A customer in the Pacific Northwest went on a crabbing trip and got upset when the guide showed him how to measure crabs to check if they were legal size. He said the measuring was taking too long, and the guide should just know by looking at them. When the guide explained it was a legal requirement and the fines are steep, the customer said, "I'll take the risk." It's not your risk to take. It's the captain's license and livelihood. But thank you for volunteering someone else's career for your impatience. 68. Near the end now, and this one feels like a perfect note to hit. A charter customer in Maine went deep-sea fishing, caught absolutely nothing for 5 hours, and then at the very end, hooked a decent-sized cod. Good fish, solid catch, saved the whole trip. And when the mate went to net it, the customer's phone rang. He answered it, let go of the rod, lost the fish, then blamed the mate for not reacting fast enough. The mate was literally 3 feet away with a net in his hands. But the phone call was apparently about a dentist appointment, so clearly that took priority over the only fish of the day. 69. This last one might honestly be the best complaint on the entire list. A man booked a full-day offshore charter in the Gulf of Mexico. The weather was perfect. The crew was great. They put him on tuna, mahi, and a beautiful wahoo. He caught more fish in one day than most people catch in a season. And his review, 3 stars. The reason? He said the trip was too long, and he got tired. 8 hours of world-class fishing, an incredible haul, a captain who knew exactly where to go, and this man's takeaway was that it was exhausting. He literally complained about getting too much of what he paid for. If that doesn't sum up this entire list, I don't know what does. If you made it this far, smash that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Now, I need total honesty from you. Out of all 69 complaints, which one do you secretly kind of agree with? Don't lie. There's at least one on this list where you thought, okay, that's actually a little bit fair. Drop the number in the comments. And if you say none of them, you're absolutely lying.